So basically, we started our company because we believed that that there was a real problem with our economic system, and that real problem with our economic system is that we don't put a value on the services nature provides. In other words, the clean air, the clean water, all of that doesn't show up in our economic system. And as a result, we have what are called externalities. We have these problems where basically we're not paying for them, so nobody sees them, so nobody cares, right? It doesn't cost a company to pollute a river, or it doesn't cost them to pollute the air. They'll continue doing it because it's not an economic cost. Likewise, if you do not put a value on forests when they're forests, that means their value is zero. Whereas if they're valuable when they're soy or when they're palm oil, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to convert these forests to palm oil or to soy because our economic system is telling us that that's what we value, that's what's valuable. And so what we've believed was that this is going to change. And this is going to change because our economic system was created at a very different era. It was created hundreds of years ago when what was valuable, what was scarce, were capital and labor, right? So that's what we put a value on. All the natural resources, all the ecosystems, all the clean air, clean water, there was too much of that, you know, and so we didn't put a value on it. I mean, there are stories off the coast of Maine in the US where people would go out in boats and like throw a bucket over the side of the boat and pull up cod fish, right? There was so many fish that people couldn't imagine a day when there wasn't going to be cod in the Grand Banks of Maine. And yet now we have cod listed on the endangered species list. The same with buffalo here in the west of America. There was so many buffalo that, you know, people would shoot hundreds of thousands of them in a day, and it wouldn't even make a dent in the millions of buffalo that were in the herds. And now there's no more buffalo. And so the equation is changing. Now what is scarce are natural resources. What is scarce are some of those services that nature provides. And as a result, we think they're going to become more valuable. Because that's fundamental economic theory, you know, supply and demand. The more there is supply of something, the less the price. The less the demand, the less the price. But the more the demand and the less the supply, the higher the price, right? And effectively right now, the price we're putting on the environment and on natural services is zero, effectively. But that's going to have to change as the supply of these natural resources continues to dwindle and the demand in the form of people continues to grow. So we created our company because we think this transition is going to come. And we would like to profit from this transition and help this transition and be a specialized investment bank. But what happens if there are very much less trees, if there's not the clean water we need, where we need it, when we need it? If there isn't the clean air where we want it and where we need it? That becomes scarcer, that becomes more valuable. We're going to start to put a price on it. We're going to start to put a price on the destruction of it. We're going to start to put a price on those who are restoring that, on those who are providing that service. And that's, I think, the shift that we're in the middle of. It's really just the beginning. It's been 15 years that I've been working in this space, and it's still just the beginning of this movement, right? But it'll happen because that's the laws of economics, you know, supply and demand. Galileo Galilei, back in the 1700s, said, you know, what greater stupidity can be imagined than calling jewels, gold, and silver precious and earth and soil base? Anyone who does that needs to remember that if there was as much scarcity of one as of the other, there wouldn't be a prince in Europe who would hesitate to spend a cartload full of rubies for enough soil to plant an orange tree. Okay? He understood back then the paradox of scarcity and that value derives from scarcity. So now we're coming to a point where all these natural resources, all these services that nature provides are becoming scarce. Therefore, they're going to become more valuable. And we want to help in that transition, and we believe there are opportunities in that transition to profit from that transition. So imagine if you're investing in forests and maintaining a forest that then provides clean water and is one of the few forests left that provides clean water, how valuable will that be? it'll become a lot more valuable. When there's a sea of soy and a little bit of forest, that forest is going to become extremely valuable. And that's the transition that we're trying to see. What I think we're going to find is that at some point, having good soil, having soil that isn't polluted by toxic substances, having clean air, having clean water is going to become incredibly valuable. More valuable than diamonds, because you can't live off of diamonds, and you can't live without clean air, clean water, and good healthy soil and good healthy food. So I do think we will come a time when that is more valuable. If that time comes, then our economic system is working better than it's working now. Over the years, obviously, we've seen many critiques of this whole concept of payments for ecosystem services and markets for ecosystem services. And I think a lot of it is very much politically motivated and ideologically motivated. And these are people who would like to see us live in a world with no capitalist system and no economic system whatsoever. I'm not sure that's possible at the stage we're in. I think actually markets are a very important tool that humans have developed. And like any tool, they can be used for good or they can be used for bad. So take a hammer. A hammer is not inherently bad, right? You can kill somebody with a hammer, but you can also build a house with a hammer. I think markets and our economic system and the concept of money, all of these are very important mental tools that we've created that are some of the most powerful tools that humans have ever created. Now, I think it would be a real shame to throw out the entire tool and say, we're not going to use that tool because it can be used badly. I would rather say, how do we use that tool well to build a society and to build a world like the world we would like to see in the future? Now, the other critique that often is thrown at these markets is that, aren't you just privatizing nature? That's one critique. Another critique is, how can you put a value on something so beautiful and so intangible as natural systems? And what I say to that is, basically, right now, in the world we live in, we are putting a value on it. It's zero. And I don't know what the exact value is supposed to be, but I can tell you one thing, it shouldn't be zero. Zero is the wrong number for the value that natural systems provide. I think that I don't see from these critics, I don't see any viable options. Going back to a world with barter and where markets don't exist and there aren't any capitalists, I don't see that as a viable alternative. So I guess the only thing I could say is Winston Churchill once said, democracy is the worst of all possible systems except for all the others, right? So I would say the same thing about markets for ecosystem services. They may be the worst of all possible systems except for all the others. I don't see a better way. They keep saying this is not the right way, but they don't have a solution either. I mean, they use speculation as if it were a bad word, right? I don't necessarily see speculation as always a bad thing. Yeah, basically, what speculation is people taking risks. And hopefully, the people who are taking the risks can assume the risks if they don't pan out, right? So take farmers and grain trading, right? Before there was markets, they would basically be growing their corn or growing their wheat, and if it was a good year, great. If it was a bad year, too bad, right? If prices went up, great. If prices went down, too bad. They didn't have the ability to manage that risk. So what happens? You get speculators coming into the market and basically saying, we'll take that risk. If it's a good year, we win. If it's a bad year, we lose. You, it's always managed, right? You, the farmer, we'll pay you a number, right? I see that as potentially a good thing from the farmer's perspective because they are managing their risk. Somebody else, a speculator, is taking that risk, right? Yes, some years they're going to make money. Some years they're going to lose money. So it's not always a bad thing. I don't think this is going to lead to a speculation on biodiversity and all these other things. I think what it could lead to is more investment in the protection of biodiversity. Already, there's a market for carbon called REDD, reduced emissions from deforestation and degradation. Already we've seen millions of dollars being invested in projects that protect forests. Probably more than have been invested in many, many years by conservation organizations and others, right? Why? Because people are hoping that they will be able to make money selling carbon credits in the future. They're not making money now. Most of them are not making money now. They're speculating. And what is the outcome of that speculation? It's more forests protected. I think that's a good thing, right? And again, I challenge many of these critics to say, okay, come up with a better solution. I'm willing to hear better solutions. I just haven't heard any better solutions yet. So what's his, do you know what his solution is for this problem? Yeah, but I come again, so right now, these areas are not being protected. Okay? If somebody comes and says, I would like to protect them, hoping I'll make money, I would say, here's my choice. It'll be lost to soybean or palm oil, or this guy is going to come and protect them for 10, 20 years. He may make money, he may not make money. What are my choices? My choice isn't to have a beautiful, pristine forest forever, because that's not what's happening. You take a look at what's happening in Indonesia with palm oil. You take a look at what's happening in Brazil with soybeans. You know, these forests are being destroyed. So given a choice between a forest being destroyed and a forest being protected, I'm going to take the protected forest every time, because I think that needs to be protected now. So, you know, this is my view. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see a better solution that people are advocating. Okay, so what do they say? Maybe we shouldn't have any palm oil or any soy, and we should protect all of that forest. How likely, how viable is that as a solution? You know, do you really think Brazil is going to totally protect the entire Amazon, and Peru and Colombia and Bolivia are going to do that? Do you think, you know, Indonesia is going to stop all palm oil production in Kalimantan? I don't see it happening.